The breakdown, right? And I'm probably going to read this one off the slide a little bit because it is a little sciencey, and especially when we talk about transamination. This is the changes of concentrations. Basically, your amino acids due to surpluses of a certain amino acid or deficits of another amino acid. Your body will take those amino acids, put it through this process, and it will spit out the amino acid that it needs. That's the idea of transamination. And so muscle proteins are on a constant turnover. They're never balanced. They're never going to stick at a static line. They're always going to go up. They're always going to go down. On a previous video, I talked about a pendulum, right? From this side being the synthetic side, this side being the breakdown side, and it's just constantly going like this. That was my rendition of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So amino acids can be used as fuel. Again, amino acids is glycogen sparing, so if you're on a marathon, you want to have a good source of amino acids to help prevent your blood glucose to start tanking a little bit, right? Glycogen gets expired, then your body has to be relying on its glucose. At that point, you would probably want to have those amino acids in your system to help prevent a lot of that, especially with that leucine, keeping the oxidative rate higher. So again, what's interesting is the nitrogen from leucine is transferred not into the urea cycle, but helps create pyruvate. Okay, pyruvate is a source for gluconeogenesis. So when we go into like the Cori cycle, and probably in a future video, we'll talk about how lactate has to basically disassociate itself into pyruvate, and pyruvate's carried off into the liver for gluconeogenesis. Here's a fun chart, amino acid cycle. So we can start here, right? You're eating foods. Where's my mouse? You're eating foods. It goes down the esophagus to the stomach. The stomach's breaking it down with its acids, going into the duodenum and the smaller intestines, and it's starting an absorption process. So you basically receive most of your elements from the first couple of feet of your small intestine, especially when we're talking about proteins and amino acids. And so what happens is once it gets into the bloodstream, it goes into what's known as the free amino acid pool. And so with this, it goes around and it continues to go around, continues to go around, continues to go around. Right? It never just stops here because you're eating great or you're recovering. It may slow down, right? It'll speed up here, then it'll slow down. Going through the circle, it'll speed up again, go through the circle. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's stopping here, okay? There's always going to be a give and take. But when we go into increasing demands, going into exercise, going to work, whatever, or if you're fasting for longer than 8-hour periods, these amino acids are now going to come back come out of the amino acid pool, going into beta oxidation through a process that we'll see here. You're liberating a carbon dioxide molecule. It's raising blood acid because of that, so your pH goes down. And then you can see right here through acetyl-CoA, it creates the necessary enzymes to begin the citric acid cycle, which is right here. I blew that one up a little bit for you. So the citric acid cycle is one of the main contributors to aerobic energy. Basically, it's really great at creating these smaller enzymes, these carrier enzymes. NAD has to carry this extra H. Then you got FAD. Where's that at? It should be in this somewhere, but it's not, because you get one FAD and you get 3 NADs here. They have to be carried over into the mitochondria. The mitochondria then converts it back to ATP. ATP makes your muscles work. So when we look at this channel, this is where a lot of those proteins, and so if you're fasting, doing fasting cardio, eating a severe energy imbalance where when you should be eating 1,800 calories, but you're only eating 900, this is what happens, okay? The protein breaks down, it goes into this acid here, or it converts through acetyl-CoA, and it becomes part of the citric synthase cycle here. So you start losing proteins faster than you lose fats, because proteins are far more metabolically active than fats are. So this is also the same process that we do use for fats. So if you're consuming an appropriate amount of proteins or appropriate amount of amino acids, that's going to help reduce a lot of that muscle wasting. So does consuming more amino acids increase physical performance? All right, so this is the fun one, okay? Here we've basically summarized it as the jury is still out. There are 2 main camps. Obviously, there's a give and take. Like I said, the research suggests that post-exercise muscle protein turnover is increased tremendously. So if you're exercising, you're breaking your muscle down, what do you think? That muscle is going to start causing that IgM response to inflame the muscle, to help repair, bring all those nutrients to it, fibroblastic activity. All that's got to happen at some point. And so it usually happens immediately after injury. Fun fact, exercise injures your muscle, and thus the repair process, the recovery process, the inflammation process is what causes it to get harder, stronger, and thicker. So with that, muscle protein is constantly turning over. Camp 1, right? The alternative is there is a difference using BCAAs. And, again, we saw in that chart earlier that it does make sense to use that. So increasing muscle protein synthesis is necessary for repair of damaged tissue. Now, that doesn't just necessarily mean muscle. That also does directly apply to like your entire immunology system. So when you get sick, get ill, these amino acids help drop your pH to create an environment for your body to start breaking down bacteria cell walls. And by that, bacteria can't survive in those types of environments. So that's why it's important to not, follow the brat diet if you have IBS. Keep that in mind. So the branched chain amino acids are essential, meaning that they are part of that whole protein makeup. They spare glycogen, they help reduce fatigue, they help increase performance, help boost the immune system, they help mobilize free fatty acids, which helps you burn fat. Okay, so that's the first camp. The other camp here is that there is not a difference, and a lot of it has to do with this 1989 study or epidemic for EMS. Basically, like we were saying, like I was saying, like what happens to leucine, right? When you have too much leucine, transamination occurs. Transamination, again, means that leucine is being converted into fan. You know that amino acid we get out of turkey day, you eat, you want to go sleep. A lot of that has to do with the tryptophan crossing the blood-brain barrier, triggering a serotonin increase. Serotonin is our feel-good hormone or neurotransmitter that makes us drop our anxieties. It helps us mitigate a lot of our cortisol balance. But in turn, serotonin in its own abundance, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, will cause you to want to rest, relax, go into a deeper slumber where over the course of that recovery time, right, 48 hours, you could actually depreciate your muscle synthetic rate, increasing the speed of your breakdown. So keep that in mind. Basically, people were dying from this back in 1989. So too much protein can be a bad thing, but when it comes to trying to combine both of these camps here, I would probably speculate if you're eating it in a proper plate composition or plate ratio of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, then you're probably not going to have this much of an issue. Other benefits to BCAA, it's extremely effective in weight management. We said earlier, the acetyl-CoA protein will break down twice as fast, almost 3 times as fast as fat will, simply because it is metabolically active. It helps you, so if you're consuming an appropriate amount of proteins or amino acids, that's going to help prevent a lot of that amino-oxidative relationship. So it helps maintain muscle mass while you drop body fat, increasing capillary mitochondrial density. So when we talk about capillaries are a high intensity and an aerobic style response. So when we look at high intensity, we basically just talk about sprinting intervals. Not a lot of like your strength training has shown to do this, but it does to a certain extent. But with capillary density, that's basically your blood comes out of your heart, it ejects out of your heart, trans down the aorta, trans down into the arteries. The arteries then turn into arterioles, which are a smaller version of that. They still have a pumping effect. And then they match up with these capillaries. Those come together to make your capillary beds. You can create more capillary beds, or the capillary beds themselves will do this notion where you're creating more oxidative transition there, so you're perfusing your muscles faster with more higher quality oxygen and absorbing a lot more of that carbon dioxide, putting it back in the bloodstream to go back through the vena cava system to be expelled through the pulmonary circuit. That's why we study this through a lot of cardiovascular based exercise, because PCG1 alpha again relates to this dissociative pathway here all the way to mitochondrial biogenesis or decay. Lack of exercise will cause it to decay. Mitochondria is a slippery slope. It doesn't take long for you to start developing good mitochondria or have a good concentration of mitochondria. On the flip side of that, less than 2 days, you're going to start losing a lot of it too. It drops fast. So this is the perception when you say that you're going to start working out because it makes you feel good, but then you stop 3 weeks later because life happens and then you just can't seem to find to fit it back into it. That's what happens, is all your mitochondria starts to start decaying, and it makes it harder for you to get back into it. Because again, mitochondria, energy makes you feel better, you're happier, you're going to work out. Again, think of the environment. So amino acids, again, real short, we're going to target the idea of it building muscle. Like the leucine trigger I mentioned earlier, it basically is, does that mean if you're trying to lose weight, burn fat, that you need to be in a leucine trigger scenario? Probably not. But when we, again, discussing those black and white concepts where energy surplus helps you build tissue, energy deficits help you lose tissue, this is kind of where we find that separation clause, or that divergence, where it stimulates that black and white paradigm. Yes, you can take it while bulking up, but you can also use it when you're losing weight. The BCAAs have a lower bioavailability than that of foods, and we talk about egg whites being the highest available bioavailable source of protein. It will not harm the individual for consuming BCAAs, because most BCAAs are sold in stores that do have suggested servings. So when you look at it, the label will say like 2 scoops for 1 serving, or a serving size is 2 scoops. But it also depends on this is probably my favorite graph of them all. Essentially, when we talk about losing trigger, it's showing you a couple of sources of protein that allows your muscles to build. And so again, we're talking about time down here. The independent variable here is 0, 60 minutes, 80 minutes, and this is absorption rates. So the intracellular leucine concentration. Right here, it's speculated somewhere between 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine is what this is. And that's where you have all this additional leucine floating around your pool. Consumption, you go up, you hit a peak here, 60 minutes is an hour. Okay, and you can see that the difference here with soy and then casein proteins. And this kind of defunks a lot of that overnight burn with casein, to where it's great for building muscle. Clearly these results, that's not exactly the anticipating. So when you look at it, as far as hitting the leucine trigger is going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis exponentially. You would have whey protein, right? And this does include whey concentrate, whey isolate, and isohydryl isolate, or the peptides. Then you have soy. Soy helps you build muscle faster than casein. However, when you look at the long term here, right, so 60 minutes to 180, so somewhere between after an hour but before 3 hours, there's a crossover. That crossover is where the casein tends to burn a lot slower, whereas the leucine, you've absorbed all the leucine up here, and now it's dropping down, where that casein will help carry over a lot of that extra prevention of muscle breakdown. Here in summary, does it build muscle? Sure. Does it help increase performance? It can, depending on the camp. BCAAs help increase fat metabolism, and too many amino acids can also increase amino acid metabolism. So your body responds to what you feed it. Again, that's why keto diets tend to work out extremely well, because if you're eating a crap ton of fats, like 75% of your daily intake is fats, your body's going to start responding to using fats. You're going to absorb it, then you're going to burn out what doesn't store, because it digests differently than the other 2 macros. But then again, the ones that are stored start liberating faster too, to help feed that citric acid cycle. So areas not really discussed is like the neuroprotective aspect. Amino acids do, again, have to bond with glucose, and, well, not just glucose, but other forms of sugar, but with other fats too, or glycerols, to help provide neuroprotective enzymes. And protein has shown, protein also helps because of its higher thermic effect, helps provide satiety. So when you get home after a long day's work, you need to eat something like 800 calories, and that's just an arbitrary number, but if you ate 800 calories of, say, like graham crackers or avocados, there's really no satiation that follows that. So you eat 800 calories, but you're still hungry, so you eat more food till you hit that satiation marker. Proteins, if you're hitting those frequency doses, or targeting the every 4-hour frequency on protein, that's going to help cause your brain to say, all right, dude, you're full, stop. I got to break this down. This is hard. The harder the food is to break down, the more energy your body has to liberate for thermogenesis, the less food that it's going to signal your brain to say it needs. Right? Here's my reference charts. I know I kind of picked up the pace towards the end there, but if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe and like it, share it to other friends that may need this type of information. Another great thing is I do have a Patreon site now, and if you feel like this material is worthwhile, or you want me to continue making videos like this, it just shows your support. If you don't want to do that, you can always hit like and subscribe. That breaks the Google source wall, where the Google gods will start feeding me money too. So think of it that way, right? One or the other, it's great. You don't even have to do either of those, but I would appreciate it if you did. So again, my name's Andy. See you later.